so if you want to go back and look at it later, you should be able to do so. Hi, this is Ryan Hoger with HVAC Solutions. As most of you know, we do a different webinar topic every month over here. Every week over here. And this week's topic is Proliphix Internet Thermostats. This is a line of thermostats that we've been using for nearly 4 years now, so we have quite a bit of experience with them. I've done nearly 700 stats at this point, so I'm pretty comfortable with them. So I'll show you how these stats work, and I'll talk to you about some of the newer things that have come out recently with these stats, and then we'll take any questions. Alright, so how do these thermostats work? The first thing you got to keep in mind with these is that on one half of the equation, they are regular, everyday 24-volt thermostats. Anything you can wire a thermostat up to, you can wire this guy up to. The difference is the other half of the thermostat is basically a little web server, a little computer, if you will. These thermostats wire onto your existing network at your office or at your home, wherever you're going to install the thermostat. As far as the network connection is concerned, it wires exactly the same way you would wire up a new computer in the office. The only difference is you'd have the jack, at 5 feet on the wall instead of having it down at the floor. But it's going to wire onto the Ethernet just like a standard computer would. In this case, it's a thermostat. There's no special software involved with these thermostats. You're going to connect to the thermostat using a standard web browser such as Internet Explorer, just like you would if you're surfing any other website. So your thermostat becomes a website. You don't install any special software. You don't update any software. You don't have to maintain any software. Everything is done online. The software is built into the thermostat itself. And the power of these thermostats, as you're going to see, is going to be the user interface, which is going to allow you to do much more than you can do on a normal thermostat front. You guys have all set up thermostats. You scroll through them one screen at a time, which is a pain in the butt. This is going to allow you to see a lot of information at the same time. It's going to give you the same kind of power you would get with a building automation system, although for much smaller properties in this case, just thermostat type properties. So inside each thermostat there is a web server. The thermostat does not need any additional hardware whatsoever to operate. Yes, it does have to wire over to a router in the building, but so does every computer in your building. So you do have to wire it into the network, but beyond that there's no special hardware you would buy for this thermostat. It's literally just the thermostat. That's 100% of the components that you need. There's no any special boxes or converters or anything like that. You can jump it onto any type of broadband connection. Inside the building, it's going to be wired on Ethernet, but then from out of the building and out, it could be DSL, cable, T1 line, whatever. By default, it uses DHCP, Dynamic Host Control Protocol addressing, which means the network that you plug it into assigns an address to the thermostat. Just like with your laptop, when you walk into your office or your house and you plug it in, your network assigns an address to your laptop so you can get onto the internet. You can set up these thermostats that way, and that's how they are defaulted. Or you can set them up with a static IP address, which means you're going to lock in a specific address in that thermostat forever instead of letting the network randomly assign one. Corporate environments tend to like it this way, and if you're talking to the IT folks, they may ask you to do it this way. And that's a good point as well. As soon as you decide to make a decision to put a product like this or any other internet-connected HVAC product in a building, the first thing you want to do is talk to the IT department at that building. Obviously, if it's a home, no big deal, you're talking to the homeowner. But in a commercial environment, find out who the IT manager is and talk to them. The worst thing you could do is slap one of these on their network and try to make things start happening and not talk to them about it. They will not be your friend in that case. Talk to them early, and they'll explain to you how they want it set up on their network, and you can work together. The job will go a lot smoother. All these thermostats are encrypted, and they're password protected, so they're not easy for someone to get onto. With that being said, pretty much everything in the world can be hacked into at some point. Every software you use, every computer you own, every cell phone you have could be hacked into. But something like this is not very likely. Most folks won't even know what it is or care. And like I said, it is password protected and encrypted. This here shows you a wiring scenario for a competitor's system. This is a small, automation type system tied to the internet. In this case, for this particular manufacturer, you can have anywhere from 1 up to 8 thermostats. They all wire back to a central panel. That panel goes through an adapter that gets onto their system controller, and that system controller connects to the router. And that's pretty common with most of these type of systems. Proliphix is a little bit unique, and they do it quite differently. In this case, the thermostat wires directly to the router. There is no gear in the middle. It goes right on there. So you cut out all those panels in the middle and all those potential wiring errors and points of failure. So each thermostat wires to a router. There's no limit on the thermostats. You can have an unlimited amount of thermostats. As many routers as you have in the building, you can keep, as long as you got keep having jacks on there or on the switches, you can keep plugging thermostats in. So no maximum. We say that these thermostats are compatible with most HVAC systems, and most means 24 volts. So anything you can put a 24 volt stat on, like a furnace or a rooftop or anything like that, you can put a Proliphix thermostat on. From the thermostat standpoint, it wires exactly the same as a regular thermostat. It does require a common wire, like most higher-end digital thermostats require, so it can power up the display of the stat itself. So if you used to have an old 4-wire stat for one-stage heat and one-stage cooling, you might need to have a 5-wire scenario now for these thermostats. Although we do have add-a-wire kits to help you get around that if you can't pull new wiring. The basic Proliphix thermostats can handle 2-stage equipment, whether it's gas furnaces or heat pump equipment. It can handle 2-stage equipment. We'll talk about some other newer versions in a minute. There's no separate power required for these thermostats. You don't need any type of power adapter. These stats are sold in 2 different ways. They are sold with Ethernet powered thermostats, where power actually comes over the Ethernet wiring to the stat, and they are sold as HVAC powered stats, which is where we power the thermostat with 24 volts from the furnace or from the rooftop. The ones that we stock and use here at HVAC Solutions and TEC are all the 24 volt versions. We can get you the Ethernet powered if you want it for some reason, but 24 volts is probably the way to go. Power it off the furnace. You don't want the power of the thermostat to be related to what's going on the Ethernet connection. If you lose the Ethernet connection, you don't want the thermostat to stop providing heating and cooling. So it's better to have the power on the HVAC side of the equation. Plus, then you don't need any additional special gear to power it. Just the thermostat wired to the furnace or the rooftop. You can do advanced scheduling for vacations and corporate holidays and things like that. You can schedule up to 3 years in advance of any particular day of the month. I'll show you that in a minute when we log into one here. And you can also schedule recurring holidays, so New Year's Day, 4th of July, things like that that are always the same every year. You can schedule those permanently in there to always go into setback mode automatically to save energy. If you do lose your internet connection, the thermostat will continue to run. Everyone seems to have that concern. So if you lose the internet connection, the thermostat will continue to function. You won't be able to go in and change all the advanced settings. You won't be able to go in and set up new schedules, but it'll continue to run your existing schedule that you had put in there, and you can go to the front of the stat and you can override the set points while you're in the space, even if you don't have an internet connection. So people shouldn't be too worried about that. They'll continue to operate even if you have spotty internet service. If you're using these in a commercial environment, you can lock them out completely so the keypad does absolutely nothing, and then the user would have to go to the internet and log in to be able to change something. So if you have this in a common area like a lobby or a hallway or a retail environment where you don't want the occupants to mess with it, you can lock it out completely. And then if you're putting it in office type spaces, maybe you want to give the occupant some control of the stat and let them have a little bit of an adjustment to temperature, but you don't want them to mess with any of the other settings, or you don't want them to be able to go into the conference room and crank it up to 90 degrees and then leave for 3 days. So you can put some set point limits in there. So you can say, for example, on the heating side, you only can go up to, say, maybe 75 you put it at. And the cooling side will only let you go down to, say, 70 degrees. You can't go any more extreme than that to kind of force people to save some energy. Some of the models can support external inputs to them. That would mean temperature sensors or contact inputs depending on the stat. So the 100 series, which would be the NT 100 and 150 and 120 models, They can support temperature sensors, so you can have remote sensors in the space. So maybe the thermostat's located in a closet. You can have the remote sensor actually out in the space doing the actual control wired back to the thermostat. You can put discharge sensors in on the ductwork, so if I call for heating, I can look and see remotely over the internet if my unit actually isn't heating because I have a discharge temperature that's, say, higher than 100 degrees. I can use it for outside air temperature monitoring. I can use it to monitor miscellaneous temperatures on anything that I want, even if it's unrelated to what I'm controlling with the thermostat. So in a restaurant, I may have the thermostat controlling the HVAC equipment, but maybe I want an extra sensor over in the walk-in freezer to make sure that temperature is okay too, and I can see that remotely over the internet. Some of the other models, like the 220, the 250, and the 550 models, also can handle remote contact inputs. So in addition to temperature, those two inputs can be set up to monitor contacts, and that can be pretty much anything. It could be filter status, it could be an alarm off of a boiler, it could be an alarm off of a freezer, it could be pretty much anything you can boil down to a relay contact. You can have this thing report pump failure, anything like that. And then three of the models, the NT150, the TM250, and the IMT550 models, also have built-in humidity sensors in them, and you can use those to either energize a humidifier, such as in a residential house or in a library or something like that, or you can use it to enable a dehumidification unit or a dehumidification sequence on the rooftop unit, and that would come up in more commercial applications. So that humidity sensor can be used either way. And in the case of the 550, it could actually be used for both scenarios at the same time. All these thermostats have the ability to send alarms out. So if you connect them to the public internet, and obviously you wouldn't buy this stat if you weren't planning on doing that, you can have these thermostats send you an email or text message alert for low temp or high temp alarm. If you have a thermostat that has the humidity module option inside it, then it can also send you an alert for high humidity. And then if you have ones that have the relay inputs on them, then you can also have alarms related to those inputs. And if you have remote sensors for temperature, like a walk-in freezer, it can alarm you on stuff like that as well. These things are pretty inexpensive. They are probably 2 or 3 times more expensive than a high-end programmable thermostat. But compared to an automation system, they're probably about 1/5 of the cost. So if you want to tie 2 or 3 rooftop units into the internet or some home furnaces, you're probably not going to find any way less expensive than these stats to get something onto the web. And there's no recurring access fees whatsoever, so there's no monthly fees, there's no annual fees, nothing like that. You can either access the thermostat locally on your own network, or you can tie it into the Proliphix.com website, which I'll show you in a minute as well, and you can access the thermostats that way, completely free. Proliphix does have some pay-for services coming out, but those would be for additional features beyond just accessing your thermostat and changing schedules and stuff like that, or alarming and stuff of that nature. But they have some additional features that'll be rolling out that may have fees associated with them, but there'll still be the free version available as well. So these are some of the market segments that we see this type of product being used in. Let me see real quick if there's any questions so far. No questions? Okay. So the places we see this often used, residential homes are a big one. People like to have gadgets. They like to play with things. If they have a vacation home, such as maybe they have a cabin up in Wisconsin on a lake or whatever, they love it for those kind of things where they can log into the thermostat before they go up there and preheat or pre-cool the vacation house before they get there. The snowbird folks, the folks that live here, and then they go down to Arizona or Florida for the winter, those folks like this kind of thing as well because they can be sent a message if there's a freeze condition about to occur in their regular home, things like that. And then commercially, the places that we seem to use quite a bit of them are in places that have multiple properties, where you have one person managing more than one location, can't be in every place at the same time. So those become quite popular, specifically restaurant chains, retail environments, unmanned huts, so like cell tower stations, toll booths, things like that, where they want to have access to multiple facilities at the same time. For some of the dealers on the Proliphix product, there are some benefits in addition to the customer benefits, obviously, and the installing dealer can be notified of problems as well as the customer. So both the end user customer and the mechanical contractor can be notified if there is an alarm condition such as low temperature. They can also log in remotely and help a customer online, perhaps without having to dispatch a tech to the site, depending on what the problem is. You can create logins for the dealer, and then that dealer login would be able to access multiple customers and help and support them without having to memorize every one of your customers' own logins. And all of your dealer contact info can be stored in the thermostat as well as on the website. There are two brand new models this year for Proliphix thermostats. These ones are the color touchscreen models. So it's kind of, the name obviously tells you what they do. All the buttons are like your cell phone would have, where they're flexible buttons and they change as the screens change. And it has a little bit sharper look to it, and it's obviously in color. They handle all the exact same features of all the regular Proliphix stats I just talked about, plus they do a few newer things as well. For example, these two new stats here, which are the IMT 550C and IMT 550W, are the two model numbers. They handle up to 3 stages of heat, whereas the previous models only handled 2 stages of heat. They can support up to 3 external temperature or remote contact inputs, whereas the previous ones only handled 2. So that means I could have 3 temperature sensors or 2 temperature sensors and a filter status alarm or any combination of things like that. On the output side of the equation, they have some additional outputs as well. So in addition to having that third stage of heat output, you could also have 2 output relays that are unrelated, if you will, to the furnace or rooftop that you're controlling. The old models used to have 1 extra output relay that you could use for a humidifier or a dehumidifier. Well, these ones have 2 outputs. You can use them for a humidifier or a dehumidifier, or both of those, or you can use it as a time clock function to enable exhaust fans in a commercial building, or turn on the exterior lighting in a parking lot or on your porch, or turn on the sprinkler system at your house, whatever you want to do based on time. So you can have that happen as well. And then one of the 2 versions, the IMT 550W, also is available in Wi-Fi. So you don't have to pull an Ethernet cable to it like you do all the other Proliphix stats. So that guy can live on a Wi-Fi network. It's very similar to, when you're setting up your Wi-Fi on your laptop to talk to a new network. You go search for the network, you find it, you put the password in, and then it's basically linked up forever there, unless you change the password of your router, obviously. If you log into the Proliphix website, this is probably a good time to check questions real quick too, just in case. It's like no new questions. Okay. If you were to log into the Proliphix website as a dealer, this is the type of screen that you would see. You would see all of your customers that you've installed thermostats on, and you'd be able to click on any one of those customers and bring up their individual properties. If you brought up a particular property, this is actually our property for TEC in Melrose Park, listing multiple stats over there. And if you click on one of those stats, you can see what's going on with it. I'm actually going to switch over here and try to log into an actual thermostat for you here. In the meantime, while I'm doing that, if you have any questions, please type them in the bottom right-hand corner there, and I'll try to answer them here. All right, let me bring this screen over here where you guys should be able to see it. Hopefully you can see my screen here. All right, you should be able to see my screen. So this right here is a thermostat in one of our Melrose Park buildings. This is actually the one located in Dominic Iorio's office, if you know Dominic. You'll notice the first thing here is I can see a lot of data, but I can't change anything right now. So it tells me what's going on right now. The thermostat is controlling to a temperature of 72 degrees. The thermostat itself is in a space, I believe this one's in a closet, where it's 67 degrees. There's a remote sensor in Dominic's office that's reading 72. So you can see that's the one we are controlling to. If we were averaging the two together, then the zone temp would say the average of the local and the remote. We have another remote sensor on here labeled as supply air temperature, showing us the discharge temperature off of the rooftop. We can see the humidity over there in that space. We can see what the current settings are. can see what's going to happen. We can see if it's running right now, and we can see if there's any alarm conditions. But I can't change anything yet. I have to log in to be able to change anything. So we'll do that here real quick. I'll log in here as an administrator. These thermostats have 2 levels of login. You can log in as an administrator or as a user. This is lightning fast apparently today. I'm not in that particular building where Dominic's at. I'm on a remote building, so it's a little bit slow. But all right, so this is what it looks like here. These first 3 tabs you can see, that's what the general user login would get you. And then below this little space here is what you get when you have the admin login. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of walk through each screen real quick so you get an idea of what you would see with these thermostats. So we just kind of went through this first screen here. You notice when I logged in, a couple things did happen that are different. And over on the right-hand side, I have the ability to change or override settings. So right now it's set up for 74 degrees cooling, 72 heating. If I decide that's a little bit warmer and I want 71, I can click on 71, come down to the bottom here and hit submit, and then it would accept that change. It'll make Dominic a little bit colder right now, and he can yell at me later. I am getting some questions here popping up from one particular user saying there's audio problems. The rest of you guys said the audio was fine, so if there are audio problems for other people, please do let me know. But originally most of you said it was okay except for one guy. So I was able to change that setting, and you can see it accepted the 71 degree set point, so life is good. If I come down here, I can override the mode. I can switch it from heat to cool to auto to off. Right now it's in the auto mode. And I can also change it from the fan from auto to on mode and to the schedule mode. On the left-hand side here, if I click over on the General Settings tab, I'll show you what that looks like. You'll notice that up in the right-hand corner of these screens, it always tells me the name of the thermostat that I'm on at the moment. So right now it says North Offices on these stats, right, which is how the stat's named. And you can see I can change that name here. I can also tell it what building it's at. And later on when I look at stats, for all my properties, it groups them automatically by the name of the building, which is kind of nice. I can lock it out. This one is locked out, but we do have it set up so that we can adjust the set point up or down a few degrees. You can see here I can set temperature limits and humidity limits here. So in this case, I have it set for 55 degree low limit. If it's below 55 degrees, I will get a text message, as will the manager of that particular property and a few other people. I got a high temperature limit in here, and then I have a humidity limit. You want to set these to be a little bit more, say 5 degrees more than whatever it is your most relaxed set point schedule is. So your night setback schedule, if it's set for 60 degrees like ours is, we alarm at 55, because if it gets down to 55, that means something has failed. Then you can set the time and the filter and all that. Let me show you the scheduling on here. So we'll click setback schedules. Oops. Don't want to do that. We want to see actual live one. Okay, so you can see the schedules here. You actually get 3 different unique day profiles to work with: occupied, unoccupied, and other, blue, yellow, and pink respectively. Each one of them has 4 times in throughout that day, like a normal thermostat would have. So under occupied, I have it starting at 7 o'clock in the morning. It does 71 degrees on the heating set point, 75 on cooling, and then it changes throughout the day. So once I set those up the way I want, I go down to the weekly schedule and I flag those to match up with what I want to do. In this case, this property, Monday through Friday, we follow the blue schedule. Saturday, we follow the yellow schedule. And on Sunday, we follow the pink schedule. If you look at the calendar view, you can see that as well. It's all set up that same way. However, you'll notice on Saturday, December 25th, which is Christmas, it's actually not following yellow. It's going to follow pink. That's probably because we have a special day configured for that as a holiday. In this case, it happened to fall on a Saturday, so it didn't really matter. It would have been in setback either way. But if it didn't fall on a Saturday like last year, then it would have been flagged on a Friday. So those special days override whatever normally would have happened on that day. So you can see here, we'll see what special days he has set up in here. So we have the ones that recur all the time, January 1st, July 4th, and December 25th. And then we could add more days in here if we want to add in Memorial Day or Labor Day or any of that kind of stuff. All right, let me show you a couple other things here. When you log into the Proliphix, so right now, if you notice here, when I'm looking at Dominic's stat, I am logged in locally through my web browser, and I am not using the Proliphix website at all. I just punched in the address of the thermostat on my company's network. It pulled up that stat, and I was able to log into it. That's one way to access it. The other way to access it is through the Proliphix website. In this case, it's access.proliphix.com. You log in there, and then you can list multiple thermostats. Or in this case, we have multiple properties listed here. Right? See all the way down the line here, we have multiple properties listed. And then if I click on one of those properties, we'll just pick one randomly. If I click on one of those properties, it'll bring up all the thermostats that are at that particular property or for that particular customer. Then we can play the Jeopardy song. Do 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 do. Oh, that was a good one to pick. There's no thermostats located on it. As you can see, our company, we're not installers, so most of the ones we have listed on here are probably temporary things where they all say unreachable. But if you were actually a mechanical contractor, you would have your actual normal customers listed on there. These ones are probably just toys at the time. Should be able to click on this one, TEC Properties. It's our own building, so we should be able to see that one. So we bring up that TEC Properties, then it lists all of our properties that have thermostats on this system. And then if we could reach them right now, or if the IT group has them firewalled and requires additional login access. When you click on one of the ones that you want to see, like the one we were on was North Offices, which is this one right here. When you click on it, it brings up the exact same view that you would have seen previously when you were logging onto it locally. So it's a way to group all of your stats together, and it's also a way to set up the alarming so you can have email and text messages push out to you, to your cell phone, so you know what's going on. Show you up here real quick some of these websites. The Proliphix website is proliphix.com, and then our training classes are tecmungo.com/training. We do stock these thermostats at most of our Harry Alter stores. And if you look at the Proliphix website and you go onto that, if you click down here on the bottom right-hand side where it says Proliphix Demos, you can bring up demo stats that are not going to be real user stats. So in my case, I was messing with Dominic's stat, but you can come on here and you can pick a stat to show a customer so they would know what to expect when they log in here. So this is just a random stat here. It's set up to be a demo, so you can feel okay with changing anything you want on there to show them how it would work. You can, change the set points and all that kind of stuff just to play with it. Rename it to whatever you want. It is a demo to be played with, so you can feel comfortable. You can mess with it and not cause any problems. You'll also notice it did not ask you to log in, and that's because it is a demo, so it automatically logs in. A real thermostat, you'd have to do a login first before you were allowed to mess with it. See if there's any other questions here that anybody wants to type in. Don't see any new questions on here. If you have any questions, please do type them in the box there, and I'll do my best to answer them. I'm going to keep this up here for a few minutes in case you do have a question. I can log into one of these stats and show you how it would work. Let's see here. Is there anything else we want to show you guys here? That probably covers it. There's the demo stats. Back to the main Proliphix website here, and I'll show you where all the various literature is as well. All right, so this is the main Proliphix website where we went to that demo here on the bottom right-hand corner. You can also look information up about thermostats. So They do classify stuff as commercial and residential on here. I don't get caught up on those labels. Just think of it more like multi-stage stats and single-stage stats. The Proliphix guys group everything as a single-stage stat into residential, basically, and multiple-stage stats into commercial. For the most part of TEC, we only stock the commercial ones because most times someone's putting this, it's usually going to be on higher-end equipment with multiple stages anyway. Plus, you can use a dual-stage stat on a single-stage piece of equipment, so it doesn't really matter in that regard. So we typically stock the commercial stats for that reason, and we don't stock the residential stats. We can get them if someone really wants them, but there's not really any advantage to doing so. They have less features, and they control less stages. So, but if you click on the commercial stats, it'll bring up the stats and give you descriptions of how those particular stats work. Very slow today, though. All right, so this brings up the new stats we had mentioned earlier. These are the color touchscreen stats. IMT 550C is the Ethernet wired, and IMT 550W is the Wi-Fi. So those are those two there. Don't pay too much attention to the pricing here. That's kind of like the MSRP pricing. TEC buys in volume, so we have a better deal than that. But here it tells you the features of how this thing works, which one does regular Ethernet, which one does Wi-Fi, what kind of staging it can handle, how many passwords it has, how far in advance you can schedule it. If you remember on the presentation, I said it was 3 years in advance scheduling. That was for the regular stats. These ones do 5 years in advance, these newer ones. Like I said, they can control humidifiers and dehumidifiers, 3 remote inputs, 2 auxiliary output relays that could be the humidifier or dehumidifier, or lighting schedule or sprinkler system or whatever you want to do, exhaust fans for the bathroom, that kind of stuff. There are some power adapters here. You will not need these for normal HVAC equipment. 24-volt power, you guys know how to get that off the equipment without any problem. And like I said, I wouldn't recommend you using the Power over Ethernet version. You guys should be using the HVAC version because you guys are all mechanical contractors on this webinar here. Then all the literature pieces are listed on here too, so you can click on them and find more info. Where is the literature piece? Of course, it's not on this particular screen. Oh, here we go, on the right-hand side. So you can bring up the product spec data, or you can bring up the install guide, or you can bring up the configuration manual. The product itself in the box ships with the install guide. The configuration manual is only available online. So that's what those guys would be. We'll show you the cut sheet on here, and then we'll call it a day unless there's any other questions here. So here is the cut sheet. I would download it if I had clicked on there. I already had it on my computer, so we're good. So it gives you all the detailed information about how this thing works, what it can do specifically. It gives you descriptions of how it works. Shows you some general Ethernet overview so people can understand how things wire into this thing. That's just kind of like the 2-page cut sheet on it. It gives you the dimensions, the specs on it, operating ranges, all that kind of stuff. Let me look and see if there's any final questions, and if not, I will go ahead and end the webinar here. Okay, it looks like there's no final questions. I thank you guys for logging in today. It's always a little bit risky when I show a live demo instead of just showing you slides because things could go wrong, but everything went right this time, although a little bit slow. If you do have any other questions on it, please feel free to give me a call. 708-670-6383 is my telephone number. Once again, 708-670-6383. And you can also email me at ryanhoger@hvacsolutions.com. Thank you very much for your time.